This is Biology Unit 6, Ecology. Here we'll look at interactions in communities. So the first interaction is predation. So this is a predator-prey relationship. So predation is the act of one organism killing another. So this is not necessarily beneficial to the prey, but it's very beneficial to the predator. So an example in my image here is the shark. It's top carnivore, so it's going to hunt its food. So that needs to occur so that the shark can survive. Another interaction is what we call coevolution. So it's the evolution of two or more species due to a mutual influence. So basically, organisms respond to each other. So in the rainforest, there's a tree known as the acacia tree, and there's a particular ant that lives on the tree. So what's the big deal? Well, the ant is getting food from the tree, so you can see in this image here, and the tree gets protection. So if any predator attempts to hurt that tree, those ants defend the tree. So that's coevolution. You have an ant and a tree that are mutually influencing each other. So one gets food, one gets protection. Why not? As opposed to parasitism, where one organism feeds on another organism or host. If you remember in the animal kingdom, you have a tapeworm. You don't necessarily have it, but you could possibly have a tapeworm in your digestive system. So the tapeworm is benefiting from your digestive system, but you're getting sick. That's this image here. You're welcome for that, and this one too. So parasites find ways to overcome your defenses, right? So you have an immune system, but they can work their way around that. HIV is a virus that specifically attacks your immune system, so it targets your immune system. So parasitism, one will benefit, the other organism will not. Herbivory, so you have herbivores, eat plants, right? That's their food. So plants need to defend themselves. So plants will develop spines, thorns, or chemicals to make the plants taste bad so they won't get eaten. So why do you think a cactus has those spikes or those thorns, right? So they won't get eaten. So pretty good defense. Doesn't always work. Some organism could probably get in there, but it's going to take some effort to get past those thorns. All right, so we can look at now some specific relationships. So we have what's called symbiosis. So this is a relationship where two species that normally don't interact, but they will live in close association with each other, either happily or unhappily. So there's three different types. So let's look at the first one here. This is called mutualism. So this is a relationship between two species where both benefit. So a good example is this cleaner fish that you see here in this image here. The cleaner fish is the fish on top of the bottom one. So the cleaner fish is eating the parasites off the bottom fish. So the cleaner fish is getting food, and then the shark underneath it, right, is getting its parasites removed. So it's happy to have those cleaner fish on it. So one gets food, and the other gets parasites removed, so it's kind of like, ah, so the pain is gone. So kind of neat. That's called mutualism. Both are happy. Commensalism is where two species have a relationship where one benefits and the other has no benefit but no harm. It's kind of like, yeah, whatever. So a good example is the bird that you see sitting on the cow, right? The bird is eating any food or bug that happens to be on the cow's back. And the cow just doesn't care. If the bird wants to eat whatever's on its back, fine, but it doesn't mind if it's there or not. So it's just like, okay, bird, whatever. So that's called commensalism. So the bird's getting some food, and the cow is just like, okay, if you want to stay, stay. If not, fly away. And then again, here's that parasitism that we saw before. So one organism benefits and the other is harmed. So this is symbiosis because two different species are interacting, but one is often getting pain and the other is benefiting. So a good example is a flea on your pets. So the flea is getting blood, that's its food from the poor doggy, and the animal is feeling pain. So yeah, that's parasitism. So now let's also look at ways communities are shaped. So we've seen some interactions. Now let's see how communities become shaped. So that word is pronounced niche, not niche or Nietzsche. That's a niche. So this is a unique position occupied by a species in terms of physical use of habitat and its function in an ecological community. So it's not a habitat, but a role or a job that an organism has in a community. And believe it or not, every organism has one. Every organism has its niche. It's here for some reason. So a good example would be dragonflies in the wetlands. I'm trying to give you as many different organisms as I can, different areas. Dragonflies eat insects. They keep the insect population down. If you took the dragonfly out of the wetland, particular insects, their population would increase, and then what they eat would actually go down, so you would really just affect more than one population if the niche was destroyed, if you took away the dragonfly. Okay, so they're meant to eat organisms, certain insects, to keep that population down. That's their job. The habitat itself is the place where an organism usually lives. So we want habitats to stay in place, but oftentimes they're destroyed. And if that's destroyed, any organism in there, their life would be affected as well. So that's how communities are shaped. We also have what's called a fundamental niche. So this is an entire range of conditions where a species survives. So you can look at an entire grassland. Every organism in that grassland has a job to do, from the grass to the zebras that are eating that grass to a lion that could eat that zebra, or an elephant could eat the grass, and then something could go after the elephant. So everything has a purpose. So the fundamental niche is the entire range of conditions where organisms survive. Now the realized niche, that's the actual niche the species occupies in the community. And this happens because other organisms steal resources. So the result is one species wins and another is eliminated, or both can live in the same area. It's like, what is she talking about? Well, look at this, water source, right? So, you know, organisms are seeking water, right? But let's say these lionesses are trying to get to water, right, to have a drink. They're not the only animal out there trying to get a drink, right? So you've got a lot of competition for that water source. So that's what we call a realized niche, right? So this is what's actually happening, like on the ground, right? So you've got a lot of competition out there for a lot of different things. So that's a realized niche. All right, you also have competition. So here's what we call competitive exclusion. One species eliminates another simply through competition. So you've got a really neat example here. This is called a zebra mussel. You can tell by those stripes on there, right? It takes over rock space. So why is that such a big deal? Well, the zebra mussel is not the only thing that wants to live on a rock. You have barnacles. But if that zebra mussel comes in, where's the barnacle going to go? Well, it's going to not survive. So that's competitive exclusion. You eliminate your opponent just through competition. So the zebra mussel wanted that space. Bye-bye to the barnacle. All right, so let's keep looking at competition here. If you divide resources, right, if two organisms eat the same food, the habitat will be divided and they will share. So you can actually just divide resources pretty well. It depends on the organisms. Ecosystem resiliency, you need predators to keep the balance of organisms in a community. So sometimes if you watch nature shows, right, and one organism is hunting for another and then he catches it, you feel sorry for the prey, but the predator needs to eat and that prey population needs to stay under control. A keystone species is critical to an ecosystem because it affects the survival and number of other species in a community. So here's a good example. If you look at the sea otter, this little cutie right here. The sea otter eats the sea urchin, which is this guy right here. Somebody's got to eat it. The sea urchin eats kelp. This is kelp. It's a type of algae. It's a protist. Kelp forests are habitats for fish and animals. So we call the sea otter a keystone species. So let's say you hunt this thing to extinction and it's no longer available. So if that sea otter is eliminated, what's going to happen? So if you take this guy out of the equation, this will increase, right? So there'll be too many sea urchins eating too much kelp, right? So this guy's gone. So this will just keep reproducing and reproducing as nobody's eating it. And then what this eats is the kelp. This is going to disappear now because there's too many urchins eating it. So the kelp forest will be gone, as well as anything in that kelp forest. So do you see what happens? So if you take out one species, you affect the survival of other species, right? So it's like a chain of events. So that's why you have to be careful about nature. You don't want to mess with it because you don't know what the result's going to be if something happens to get eliminated from an ecosystem. So what's essential is biodiversity. An ecosystem needs biodiversity to keep it going. If disaster strikes, more diverse area has a better chance to rebuild. Okay, so here's two very diverse areas, diverse ecosystems. Okay, so biodiversity is essential for ecosystems.